Hello YouTube, welcome on in. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I like to draw my little chibi anime characters. I'm going to try my best not to cut anything out, so this might be a bit of a long video, but I want to give you guys an in-depth tutorial. So let's get on started. I also just wanted to let you guys know that this chibi drawing is also available as a PNGtuber. I'm also doing a giveaway for her. I will be picking 2 winners. All you have to do to enter the giveaway is subscribe to my YouTube channel, drop a like on this video, and comment below your favorite animal, as well as your Discord name or your name on Twitter so I can reach out to you. I will be choosing the winner in next week's video on January 7th of 2023. So keep your eyes out for that video to announce who the winner is, and if you are the winner, check your messages. So first I like to start with my sketch. I'll show you, I got my main sketch here at my layers. I like to keep my Procreate layers very organized, so I title everything. First, I'm going to show you guys exactly what kind of brushes I like to use for this type of art piece. My sketches I always do in this technical pen, and I've added probably stabilization about 50% on this one. My next brush that I like to use is called the Round Wet Sketch Brush. This one is not free. I got it off of Gumroad. I'll leave the link in the description where I got it. I believe it's a pack of brushes that's $7. The other brush I'll be using is just the regular untitled brush. Those will be my 3 brushes I use in this art piece. I won't use any other brushes. So I pretty much just start filling everything in, but I'm just using the untitled brush for this. And I'm slowly filling everything in. As you can see, I've already created a new group for certain layers. I like to keep very organized so you don't lose anything. Here's my hat group. And I have each coloring on a new layer. So the cream color is on its own layer, and then the little panda ears are on their own layer as well. Now we're moving along to the hair color. I hadn't quite decided. I knew that I kind of wanted to do like a neutral toned color, maybe like a little brown or kind of silvery color, so I'm just playing around here. This art piece is actually inspired by a Genshin Impact character named Sayu. I just pulled her on stream yesterday, so I decided to draw a little chibi character inspired by her character design. Another really helpful tip I use when I'm coloring in layers that are a really light toned or a similar color to the background is after I've used the fill effect, I actually go and I change the filter or like the opacity layer to something is usually here, because then I can actually go ahead and I can see the gaps that I've missed when coloring. I find perfectionism is really important when you're doing a commission piece for someone else. And I do a lot of art commissions and custom commissions for clients and other people that want artwork. So perfectionism is important, or near perfectionism. I need to make sure there's no gaps in my artwork when I'm selling artwork. So I really like to make sure and go back and make sure that I haven't missed even a little speckle, because at some point somebody will notice and that really affects the quality of my art. So as you can see, a little tip for this. And then when you're done with the darker color, you can just go back and turn the opacity filter back to normal and it'll go back to the color you chose. I'm just adding a new layer now for the hair so we don't get lost in the sauce. This is probably my best tip for new artists that are new to digital art, is stay organized. Stay organized. It helps you. It has saved my booty so many times. So right now I'm just filling in all of the base colors. I'm not going to be doing any shading in it, so I don't confuse anyone that's actually trying to follow the tutorial at all. So I'm just making sure that I'm getting all my base colors filled in. I did do a separate neck layer and a face color layer, by the way. It makes it really easy when you're adding shadows and highlights down the future if you separate those pieces of skin. Any piece of skin that you have that you're coloring in, I recommend to separate. Like, you can do the arms on the same layer, but do the torso on a separate layer, or do the hands on a separate layer. I find it makes it really easy when you're highlighting and adding shadows accurately, that you can just put it on its own layer. I'm also having a bit of a hard time. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to use like a yellow for the sweater. Originally, I did want to keep this kind of color palette kind of neutral, maybe a little bit playful, but I feel like the yellow looks, it's too muddy. Like our piece is all the same color. Like, I want to add a little bit of spice somewhere, you know? Another trick that I'll show you is if you're having a hard time choosing a color, but you kind of know sort of the saturation tone or color family that you're wanting to go through, after you finish coloring it in, go ahead and click on the little magic tool at the top and press hue, saturation, or brightness. You can kind of play around with the tones that you want, and it'll save your butt. Like, look at this. You can just kind of change the color and play around the tones that you like to find something that looks good, that matches the art piece you wanted. So as you can see, I've got pretty much all of her finished. Her colors are very nice. Got all the base colors. I'm just once again making a group for the clothing, making sure that I'm keeping organized. So now I'm going to be starting with some of the details and the colors and the shading of the face. So I wanted to go with sort of a pinky orangey type cheek. With the Chibi characters, I typically do a very dramatic blushed cheek. I just think it looks very cute, and it's very on brand for the anime style that a Chibi character is. So I went with this sort of peachy orangey tone. So I just go ahead, I draw the little circles that I want, and then I add some Gaussian blur, and it blends it out super nicely for you. Be really careful with the Gaussian blur. Be really careful, artists, with the Gaussian blur. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. Be very careful, artists, with the Gaussian blur, because it can quickly make your artwork very muddy and messy. So try to be limited with the blur. But I think it works really nice for cheeks and also for muting certain highlighted parts. That's about it. I wouldn't recommend using it for shadows or anything like that. And then my signature little look with the cheeks, I do these little 4 or 5 highlighted white dashes. You can also do them in sort of a dark pinky tone or a darker tone that you did the cheeks in. I think it looks nice. But for this one, I wanted her cheeks to be glowy and highlighted, so I'm using white, and then I just move around the layer to see exactly the position I want and make sure that it's dimensionally correct with the eyeballs and where her cheekbone should be. And then I just duplicate it and I bring it over to the other side, because sometimes I feel like it looks funny if I try to replicate it on the other side. It looks uneven, so this makes it easier. And then just play around. You can move things around and see where you want things to be laid out. Also be careful if you're moving things around. Procreate will reduce the quality of the object. It will reduce the resolution of the object you're moving. So try not to do it with too many things, because it'll make it bad quality. But with cheeks, it's kind of fine if it's blurry, to be honest. And then I just go and I add the opacity layer and I put it on add. You can kind of look around and see what's brighter, but add is my go-to. It makes it a little bit fuzzy. See, look at the difference. It makes it fuzzy and brighter, and it's so nice. Cute. And then my signature, I always put a little heart in the corner. I think it's so cute. And then I just do like a little pink dot for the nose. And I don't actually draw a nose there. I just put a dot. Kind of like Rudolph. And look, I lowered the opacity and it's perfect and easy. And I ended up choosing some facial highlights. I'm just adding some white in the middle and making that blurry too. And then reducing it. I think it just makes the face look a bit pointier and adds a bit of a focal point. Makes it a little bit more 3-dimensional instead of 2-dimensional. Now we're going to move on to the eyeballs. The eyeballs is what's going to make or break your artwork, I swear. I like to do, for the Chibi style artwork, I like to do very simple eyes. We're going to start with the whites. I do like about 2 shades lighter than the face if you're super pale, like the pale drawing I did, or just use sort of a cream color. You don't want it to be too vibrant. I ended up having to choose like stark white because my Chibi drawing is pale as a ghost, so I had to do white, but I recommend doing an off-white if you're doing any other skin tone. Then I'm adding another layer on top, and I'm grouping them together, the eyeball group. Next, we need to draw the shadows of the eyelid themselves. So kind of choose a mauvey gray color, more of a grayer color than the whites of the eye, and I'm gonna draw it through halfway of the whites of the eye, and it just adds this like shadow effect. This is very important. Look at me adding a clipping mask and you'll see I'm not able to draw out of the lines of where I drew the whites. It's perfect, so easy. Ta-da! The shadow of the eyes, this shadow that I just drew, I find is extremely important for drawing a detailed art piece. I recommend definitely learning how to draw this. Next, I'm doing some sort of lightish brown colored eyeballs. Very cute, very neutral, earth toned. We're sticking to a theme. So I'm just gonna color in the full pupil area. I'm just gonna color in this full area here. And now we're going to be doing the detail work. So I'm adding a new clipping mask so we don't mess up. And I'm going to be going with a darker color. I'm playing around with the colors again, seeing what I like. I'm going to go with a bit of a warmer color. More red, I think. And I'm following along where I drew that shadow, and I'm going to fill it in. Now, you don't want it to be exact. You see that I drew the darker color a little bit further ahead than the shadow. You don't want it to be exact, otherwise I find that it looks a little bit, it's too perfect. It looks funny, and I'm also curving the edges a bit, so I'm not drawing a straight line. You want to give the illusion that the eye is curved, because it is, you know? See, it's curved a bit, and then we're drawing the actual pupil itself. These don't have to be perfect, because we're going to be drawing over the pupil with some other details, but you get the idea. Pretty happy with how this looks. The right eye looks a little bit funky, but again, it does not have to be perfect. Now we're choosing a lighter color, and I do this sort of brightening effect in the middle here, like a little horizon line, if you will. And we fill it in. Again, this is on a clipping mask layer. Ta-da! Makes the eyes look super glossy. Now I'm gonna switch to the round wet sketch brush. You can continue with the same brush we were using before, but I like this one for the little details. It's got a lower opacity and it's a little bit more creamy. So I'm just adding these little dashes here. For a free alternate, again, just use Studio Pen that Procreate offers. It's not quite the same. I still recommend, if you have the finances to purchase the Blue Satan brush kit, I recommend. They've got a lot of really good brushes in there, but of course, if you're a free to draw kind of person, Studio Pen or the Untitled brush is fine for this too. We did some little highlights. You could do speckles here if you wanted. Some people do hearts or squares or triangles. I just do scribbles. Next, with the same round wet sketch brush, I'm going to be adding some chunky highlights to the top of the eyeballs themselves. I want to keep it sort of creamy colored and warm toned here. So for my eye highlights, for the chunky ones, I do triangles. You could do any shape you wanted, but I just always do triangles. I feel like it's in between realistic and cartoonish. And these don't have to be perfect either. I feel like a little bit of quirky, a little bit of messy is nice. They're also not perfect triangles, so they're a little bit rounded. They're a bit rounded, but I like how it looks. There you go. There's my little eye highlights. And my signature look in all of my eyeballs that I like to do is I put a heart over top of the pupil. It's so cute. And it just adds that extra little detailed touch. You can do either a lighter color or a darker color, whatever you prefer. I feel like I do a mix of either, lighter or darker, depending on the art piece. I ended up switching the brush back to the Untitled brush because the round wet sketch was a little bit too opaque and you could kind of see the shimmer underneath it. I don't like that, so we just did the eyeball that way. Sometimes I will duplicate the first heart and put it over on the second one. Sometimes I just draw them separately. I did this one too big. I'm gonna redo this. I like the smaller one better. Now I'm going back over top of that first dark color we placed on the eyeball, and I'm adding sort of this purpley reddish color, and I'm gonna blur it out, and it just adds a little bit of extra dimension because I feel like the eyes are a little bit flat looking. A lot of the times I will add white little specks or sparkles in the eyes, and I put the opacity filter as add on top of the sparkles. Sometimes I find though that it adds a little bit too much detail to the chibi that I want. Sometimes I just want a really simple chibi. So this time I did not end up adding too many sparkles. Kept it simple, but if you're drawing a more realistic art piece or you want overly realistic eyes on your chibi drawing, you could add sparkles. I'll put a little example of some other sparkly eyes I've done in the past so you can have an example of what I'm talking about. I also forgot to put eyebrows on this girl, so we're just gonna draw some cute little triangle eyebrows. I probably have two eyebrow styles that I draw every time. It's either these little teeny Ariana Grande brows, or I do look a little bit more of an arch on the other ones, but very simple brows. And then I just am taking the hair color, but a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated, and I'm slapping that on. That is the color that I'm choosing for the lashes, and then I think I'm doing the same color for the brows. That's the same color that I'm going to do for the lashes. I recommend you do your eyelashes a little bit darker than the hair color, or a little bit more saturated, or you can just do dark, like black eyelashes too, but a lot of the times I like to do the same color as the hair. And then I'm going back in through the hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'm making it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated because I felt like they blended in too well with the hair. I want the eyelashes to stand out a little bit. And then I'm adding some whites and the highlights in my eye here too, just to give it some simple pizzazz. And there you see I added a little bit darker color for the brows. Makes them stand out a little bit too, which I really like. Next, we're going to move on to the highlights and the lowlights and the shadows of the panda hat. So I've switched back to the round wet sketch brush, and I chose a little bit more of a darker and less saturated color than my base color, which is the cream colored hat. And I'm adding a clipping mask. And you'll see the way that I like to do highlights. I actually like to keep them very chunky and bold. So I'm coloring in fully the areas by the base of her neck, and then I just do very chunky, fast movements for the base shadows. Again, you can see the clipping mask coming into effect and helping us out because I don't need to worry about drawing outside the lines, and I don't need to worry about cleaning anything up. I can just haphazardly whip my pen around and get the job done. And for the highlights, I do this whole like chunky square for all my chibis, and I just think it looks so cute, and it adds a little bit more of our cartoonish look and a little bit less realism, which is exactly what you want for a chibi. When you're adding highlights, you need to pick a light source or a direction that your light is coming in from. I've put her light source right above her head, but a little bit off to the right. So you can kind of see where the shadows come into play that way and where the highlights come into play. It's very important to pick your light source early on, especially if you're going to be drawing a background with a light source literally in the background. Like if you're drawing a sun or a moon, or maybe they're beside a lamp, you need to properly space out where your light source is before you start adding shadows and highlights, because it'll be very obvious when you're done your picture that you did not put your light source or your highlights where they should be correctly. And I'm doing the same chunky highlights. I always do this highlight every time. It's so cute. You can already see the dimension of the hat is really coming together, and that took me like 2 minutes. Now we're going to be moving along to the hair, and we're going to add the shadows. Now you'll see I do the hair every single time the same as well. I add chunky highlights to the bottom of my pieces of hair, especially around the bangs. I will also link a couple tutorials for drawing anime hair to get you started in how to draw anime hair, especially help with your sketches. And I'm still learning, of course, but I'll show you how I got to where I am now and what I've learned. So I'll put that tutorial in the description box below as well, just to help you guys out. So I'm just kind of shaping around where all of my pieces of hair stand out. They don't even have to be perfect. Like, I'm literally just scribbling. Like, I'm even like the other outstanding pieces on the top of the head, I'm just like drawing a line over the black piece. It's not even perfect. Like, that's the Nike symbol. But I am keeping in mind where my light source is. So I'm not doing the same shadow on every single piece in the same direction. I'm kind of switching it up based on where it's located on the head. And I think it looks nice. And as you can see, I'm doing very blocky movements. They're very chunky, and that's what I like. I kind of like the chunkier hair look, and I feel like that's very common in anime and chibi style hair. I don't know much about drawing realistic hair yet, but that's not quite my art style anyways. I like the cute cartoonish art style. I also am going in with a little bit of a lighter color on some of the pieces just to add a little bit more dimension to my shadows. You don't have to do that. I feel like it doesn't change too much, but sometimes I feel like it. I'm also adding some shadows where the hat's sitting as well. You can also add shadows onto the forehead, but I don't always like how that looks. So I decided not to on this girl, but if you're drawing a little bit more realistic, it's probably a good idea. Adding some shadows near where the face lies as well. Just kind of adding shadows where I think that they would naturally sit on a person. I also like to add this highlighted crown on the top of all of their heads. And then again, I go in with that Gaussian blur. I should have gone with a little bit of a whiter color, I think, but I'll go through and play with the filters a bit. I just think it looks nice. You want to make sure you're careful with that though, because sometimes I do it and it looks like the girls have literal unblended dry shampoo on their scalp. It's not a good look. So go light on that. Go light on that option. And then I like to add these highlights near the bangs, and it just makes the face pop. Definitely go with a lighter, more saturated tone for what your original hair color is. And then I just go ahead and I like to play with the filters to see what looks the best. Like, you don't want it to be too bright. Like, her skin's not glowing that much. But you also don't want it to be too saturated so it looks like a different hair tone there. You want it to look like the sun is hitting her hair and her face and it's just reflecting. Like, you want it to look natural. I feel like it brings more attention to the actual character's face as well, like adding that symbol highlight onto the bangs. Now we're going to move on to my big, beautiful, chunky highlights on the head. I'm gonna do the same shape. I like to do some little zigzags where I feel like the face is gonna hit, and I also do circles or squares or triangles. It adds that like bouquet or the bouquet look. And then here's my little scribbles. I'm keeping them chunky and it's just very simple. And I usually play around with the opacity filters again, just to kind of get that perfect look that I'm aspiring for. I don't want them to be too shiny, but I also want them to still blend with the hair nicely and add that highlighted look. Then I'm adding that neck highlight that I mentioned earlier with the clipping mask on, of course. And this is why we drew the neck on a separate layer than the rest of the face. And now I'm just paying attention to where my light source is coming from, and I'm adding some shadows. And I'm being a little bit more careful with how I'm shaping these ones because I don't want it to look too chunky and too straight. I want it to be a little bit curved to sort of work with how I think this girl's arm's bending. And some can be chunky because also fabric often folds in a chunkier way as well. And then we're just gonna move along and do the panda's shadows and highlights and make him look all cute like a little stuffed animal. I also decided to go ahead and add these little toe beans to the panda, and now it looks like he's putting his feet out instead of just having his feet closed. I also noticed, so I took a second look back at my artwork, and I feel like the clothing just did not have enough details. So I'm going back, I'm grabbing my sketch pen, the technical pen, and I'm gonna add some extra little creases and details into the clothing. Then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna add some shadows to the creases. But I wanted our clothing to be a little bit more frumpy and a little bit more detailed than it was giving. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm doing now. I also noticed I had like a little speck that I had accidentally put somewhere. So the easy part is why we organize is I'm just going and hiding the full group layer so I can very, very quickly locate where that little speckle that I left on the canvas was. And then I'm just gonna add a base little canvas color, and that's it. Miss Sayu inspired drawing is finished. This took me in total an hour and 20 minutes to draw, from start to finish and no stopping. So I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. I hope that you guys use it in your own artwork. If you did follow the tutorial and you wanted to show me, I do have a Discord with an art channel that you can post artwork. I would love to see if you guys use my tips to help or aid in your artwork at all. Other than that, thank y'all so much for watching today's art tutorial. If you did like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows that people actually like it, and let me know in the comments below if you want me to do more art tutorials like this. I would be more than happy to. This was really, really fun to draw. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next art tutorial. Bye!